greatest, that is a vow, yeah, that is a promise. Always wanted to be famous, just being real, yeah, just being honest. My haters won't always be nameless, give them no clout, I give them no power. Creators are different, they ancient, sooner than later, what will be ours? I keep an eye out for the numbers, I stay in contact, synchronization. To infinity, even beyond it, I am a common, no destination. A lot of things I am above, and there are a lot of things that are above me. Do not come for the people I love, cause then I get scary, then I get ugly, yeah. Ain't no problem when I'm the equation. Present, noted, observation. I'm not new here, reborn creation. Come and find me, send it.
Resurrection of Jesus Christos, or Jesus the Christ. The holiday in general usually involves a church service at sunrise, a feast which is included an Easter ham, decorated eggs, stories about rabbits. And those who love truth learn to ask questions. And many questions must be asked regarding the holiday of Easter. Is it truly the day when Jesus rose from the dead? Where did all of the strange customs come from, which have nothing to do with resurrection of the Savior? What I want to do is to help answer these questions and to help those who seek truth to draw their own conclusions. The first thing that we need to understand is that professing Christians were not the only ones who celebrated a festival called Easter. Ishtar, which is pronounced Easter, was a day that commemorated the resurrection of one of their gods that they called Tammuz. Now, these are people who are not Christians. Tammuz, who was believed to be the only begotten son of the moon goddess and the sun god having red. In those ancient times, there was a man by the name of Nimrod, who was the grandson of one of this newest movie coming out, Noah. And the real name for Noah was Upanishtim. Noah was not his name. And that movie took liberty with that. People still don't understand what that movie was trying to tell people. We'll get into that too. And Noah had a son who was named Ham. Ham had a son that was named Cush, and he married a woman by the name of Semiramis. And Cush and Semiramis then bore a son and named him Nimrod. Now, after the death of his father, Nimrod married his own mother and became a very, very powerful king in history, but people still don't know the full story of Nimrod. We're going to talk about that. The Bible tells of this man, Nimrod, in Genesis, the 10th chapter, all the way through the 8th and 10th verse, and it states it pretty much that as Cush begat Nimrod, he began to be a mighty one in the earth, and he was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherever it is said that even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and then Erech, and then Akkad, and then Calneh, and then the land of Shinar. Now, all of these are quotes from this book that the biblical scholars, and I don't pretend to be one, but I read it, talked about that is happening. Nimrod became a god and a god-man to the people, and Semiramis, his wife and mother, became the powerful queen of ancient Babylon. Nimrod was eventually killed by an enemy, and his body was cut in pieces and sent to various parts of his kingdom. Semiramis had all of the parts gathered together, except the one part that could not be found. And of course, that was the penis that was said to be thrown into the Nile and was never recovered. During this time, no meat was to be eaten, and the worshipers were to meditate upon the sacred mysteries of Baal and Tammuz, and to make the sign of the cross, or in this case, the T, an incomplete cross, the T-square. And they're supposed to do that in front of their hearts as they worshiped. They also ate sacred cakes with the marking of a T or cross on the top. And every year on the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox, a celebration was made and is still humbly sought. It was Ishtar's Sunday and was celebrated with rabbits and eggs. Ishtar also proclaimed that because Tammuz was killed by a pig, that a pig must be eaten on that Sunday, and that's where that eating of the pig comes from. So So I think by now, as you listen and understand what I'm trying to make a connection of again, is that contemporary Christianity and its churches, that the paganism has come by way of the Roman Catholic system, and this is why now you will find the Roman Catholic Church is going to fall. Remember, you heard it on your show. Some people understand it, some people don't. But as these next months come on, you watch on the 27th, by the way, another prediction, what's going to be an edict that comes out of the Catholic Church. The truth is that Easter has nothing whatsoever to do with the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ. And we also know that Easter can be made as much as 3 weeks away from the Passover. And that's, again, if you're Jewish or Hebrew. And this is another big thing we should get into. Because the pagan holiday is always set as the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. It's the Passover. The first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. And people get this real soft on now about the red moons and I'm going to tear that one apart. Either way, some have wondered why the word Easter is in the King James Bible. Well, there's lots of things in the King James Bible that shouldn't be there. As you know, King James did this so he could marry his whore and get rid of his wife. And he changed so much in there, it's a shame. People don't realize that when you realize that version. And in fact, when you go back and you understand that those who are very much into the horoscope, and I call it horoscope, and very much into the so-called, astrology, that if you were before the AD time of the Advent, and you were born in January and February, you don't exist. If you're Capricorn or Aquarius, you don't exist, because there was none. King James has changed so much, Pope Gregory has changed so much, Julius Caesar has changed so much, the Christian church has changed so much, and those that were blaspheming against the consciousness of the Christian church are still being exposed. We're going to expose it all tonight. If you understand, too, that I think it was in Acts chapter 12, it tells us that it was the evil King Herod who was planning to celebrate Easter and not the Christians. The true Passover and pagan Easter sometimes coincide, but in some years they are a great distance apart. It depends on the year, and now that we even have leap years coming once in 4, with February then having 1 day more, and there's no longer an equal 30 days as it used to be, we're all off keys. In fact, in the year of Advent, 45 AD, they lost 445 days, which they just threw away. The Pontiffs forgot to keep time, and Rome was so busy battling that they just threw those days away. They've never made them up. That's why we don't even know what time it is. The calendar is here, and the calendar is all off. The true Passover and pagan Easter sometimes coincide, but in some years they are great, great, great distance apart. So much more could be said for seekers of truth. And we know that I think, what is it in John? I had it written down, so 4th chapter, 24th verse or something like that, that God is a spirit, and that they must worship him in spirit and in truth. The truth is that 40 days after Lent, eggs, rabbits, hot cross buns, Easter hams, everything to do with ancient pagan religion, mystery of Babylon, these are the things that are still celebrated, and these were supposed to be the things that were anti-Christian or the anti-Christ. Yet we do them, and you got Christians going out there buying ham right now, eating a pig right now, and this is what, again, when after the death of Nimrod, this is what they told, you had to eat the pig because now the pig should be devoured because of what they did. We, again, don't begin to understand our religions. And I make the statement as an ex-minister, and you know how I left that church, because I'm not a hypocrite, and it hurt like mad after studying and spending time away, giving up sex, giving up money, trying to study so I could get my cloth and get out there, to find out that they wasted my time. The only thing they gave me was the ability to question anything that they teach, and I still do. Don't respect them, and understand that whatever they say do, that's probably what I should do the opposite of. We are still following pagan religion. Or there's some people who believe that Christianity is a pagan religion, so again, maybe it works out to the good for that. There has been what we call the 13 crucified saviors, the idea that all of these churches, and there are 13 basic churches, 285 sects, that's SECTS, and yet we begin to say that the only one that has a origin in truth with a book to back it up is the one that is called Christianity. And not only does it not have an origin in truth, but it is full of metaphors, it is full of half-truths, it is full of questionable acts, it is full of symbolisms, it is just full, again, you got Easter or do you have Ishtar? Do you have the crucifixion of the Christ and the Lord, which was done on Golgotha, and he crucified between two thieves, and as he died, he said, and you too shall be in heaven with me. Is that a true factor? Are there two people hanging on crosses at Golgotha and the two thieves beside it? You'll find when you begin to look at that, and then when you begin to look at the word caduceus, and the fact that the medical doctors now use a caduceus, and this is the allopathic medical doctors, and don't know, again, unless they're into masonry, because most of them are definitely not Moors. They don't even understand what caduceus is. They don't understand about the moving of a stone for the freeing of the Christ child. And of course, what the heck does that have to do with Easter eggs? Let me clear this up too. The crucifixion between the thieves was done on Golgotha. And if you look at Golgotha, it means the land of the skull. It is a metaphor. It means the skull that is in the body, by which the pineal pituitary complex and glands can then rise for a while when the person goes up and needs a bony stone structure to house the brain. It has nothing to do with the ascension there. Golgotha means land of the skull, and the two thieves are the Ida Pingala pneumogasthic nerves. They are the twin cords that go up the 32 steps of the 32 vertebra and the 32 ascension cycles. And as you look at the base of that, there is what is called the solar person and the solar plexus, by which the umbilical cord was tied when man came into womb and was born. And it represents, again, these two robbing energies, Ida Pingala pneumogasthic nerves, that wrap around the spine. And as a person is beginning to raise consciousness and to come into the two being while locked in a mortal physical body, these dracons, and you know I use them all the time, have so fit to make these bodies now that we're in calibrated, but was already predicted that they would do so, because it is not to be taken literally, and yet we're going to celebrate it as Easter. So I'll give you a metaphysical look at what those symbols mean. And since they wrap around the spine, there is energy at another brain that we have, the second brain we have, which is behind the navel umbilical cord by which we were born and tied to womb man. And when the sun shines upon that cord, it also produces energy. And when that energy is not spent in sex, but begins to try to be gone back to get us to a higher authority of birth, then that energy is thrown to the base of the caduceus, the base of the triangle at the spine, by which also the vagus nerve, the sciatic nerve, starts to run its journey down to the leg, so you can go up or down. But then it starts as a fluid. And that fluid begins to build up if you don't use it in sexual intercourse, and it begins to build up till it gets to the 16th vertebra. When it gets to the 16th vertebra, it changes to a gas, and that gas begins to rise up very slowly with each day that you do not conceive or do not spin your seed and eat properly, and as I now say, taking a lot of the monatomic gold, but that's my aside. And then when it gets up there into the 32nd vertebra, it runs into another block. It runs into what is called the seat of draconism. It runs into the dog brain. It runs into the reptile brain, which does four things: fight, feed, flee, or fornicate. And that's what basic soldiers do. That's what basic people who have very little consciousness, they're either fighting all the time, running all the time, feasting on something all the time, or beginning to use it in a sexual escapade. Not love, but sexual escapade. Wasting the seed to do nothing but feel better, because they already feel bad because they cannot rise above that consciousness. Let me also say then that the rolling of the stone is a breaking free of that little gristle thing part that stops you, because it's right outside the reptile brain, from ascending into your brain and your higher consciousness, which is in the skull. That's what the land of the skull meant, and he failed and crucified because he could not rise to the higher height. If you can rise to the higher height, then you get past the reptile brain, and now all that energy can be spent in doing wondrous things. If it goes to the left, and this is what they always tell you in these man-made Caucasian-type pagan schools, that you must go up there and become very analytical. You must use and analyze and analyze and so on and so forth. And you never get around to getting in crossover past the insectoid brain to the other hemisphere, where the right brain, which knows all, is all, knows your history, knows the future, and that's where we're supposed to get. And then, if we want to go back and reproduce as a risen person, the babies you bring in and everything else would be much stronger. They take all that away and have now made a metaphor into a consciousness that we still celebrate. I know I just covered a lot of territory. That's just the beginning. And of course, the Easter egg was just simply talking about eggs that could be brought forth. And the eggs then were colored based on, again, the idea that just the white egg was an offshoot, because there are two types of eggs that are laid by chickens. One is a brown egg, and you have to pay all kind of money to get a brown egg. It's a naturally melanated egg. And the other is an egg that is very pale and has not the richness of the brown egg. It doesn't even have a membrane. When you crack it, it has no membrane. It is a lesser ite. And this is why we eat of the lesser fruit of the womb, the lesser gods of consciousness, and this is why, stupidly, we fall down to the kind of hierarchy that we have now, way below the grade we should. We eat wrong, we think wrong, we drink wrong, we breathe wrong, and we do wrong, and then we look for righteousness. Righteousness is not in that. It is fallen from consciousness.